Right, okay, we can now proceed. Our design is now complete. So we now need to implement this design. I am going to use Eclipse. You can use any other text editor or any other IDE that you are maybe familiar with. Right, so what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to create a project. I'm going to call it employee project, right? And then I click on finish. Now that I have a project, what I now need to do is to create a package inside that project. I'm going to call it employee package, right? And a package is just a collection of related files. So what we are basically going to do is we are going to add all the classes into this package. So far we have got 2 classes, but we are going to add more classes. So by definition, a package is just a collection of related files. Then I click on finish. Then after that, I now need to create a Java class. Right, the first class that I am going to create is the employee class. And the modifier or specifier is going to be public. And here I'm not going to check any of these check boxes. I then click on finish. Right, so this is now my class. The first thing that I might need to do is maybe to add a comment which describes the purpose of this class. It is actually a good practice to just add some comments to your code. This basically improves the readability of your code. Right, so I'm going to start with a special type of a comment, which is a kind of a comment that is compiled into the Java doc or Java documentation. Right, you can specify the author, you can specify such things as maybe the version of the program. I can maybe just call it version 1. You can specify such things maybe as the category and all these other values. Right, then the date, maybe 20 16 10 8. Right, then maybe after that you might just need to add a description, maybe this program or this class models employees with the name and salary is private. Right, then you can actually maybe give a detailed description of the class. Right, then I come to the body of the class. Right, so here that is where I add the state and the behavior of this employee class. So there are 2 attributes which are private, and we have these methods. Right, we have the get name, get salary, change salary, then we have got two constructors, employee with no arguments and employee with arguments. Right, so let me start by adding the attributes. Since they have got private scope, I'm going to use the keyword private to declare these variables. Private name, then data type first, then the attribute, then private double salary. Then after this, I now need to define the methods. Right, for now I'm going to skip the constructors. I will come to the definition of constructors after I have defined the other methods that I have specified in my design. So I'm going to start by implementing the getName method. So public, that's the scope or visibility of the method. And what does it return? It returns a string, and the name of the method is name. Right, doesn't take any arguments. Then I provide the body of that particular method. We need to simply say return name. Right, return name. Then the other method, the get salary, public double get salary, doesn't take any arguments. Right, then we just return the salary. We just return the salary. Return salary. Right, one thing that I might just need to mention is that if you are using IDEs like Eclipse, IntelliJ, NetBeans, and many other Java IDEs, you can actually just generate these getter methods. You don't have to code them. You don't have to manually write them. The reason why I am doing it manually is for you to really understand how methods are written. But once you have mastered the concept of writing methods in Java, then you can just insert these functions without having to do it this manual way. Right, then let me now add the change salary. This does not return any value when it is called, and when it is finished executing and is now returning to the calling program, doesn't return any value. And the method name is change salary. Right, and it takes salary as an argument, or even a percentage increment. Maybe we can either use a percentage increment, right, or we can just pass the new salary as an argument. So I'm going to pass the new salary as an argument. Then here we simply say salary is equal to salary. Salary is equal to salary. Right, so this salary, which is on the left hand side, it refers to the instance variable that we declared here, and the one which is to the right is the local variable that we declared there. Right? To avoid confusion, we normally use the keyword this, right, or prefix it with the keyword this, right? If you recall, when we were calling non-static methods in classes which are in the application programming interface, for example, when we were calling the methods which are defined in the scanner class, we had to create a scanner object first, and then we used that object together with the dot operator to invoke methods like next, next line, next int, and so on, right? And so for you to reference an object, or for you to reference a variable in Java, you need to specify what? You need to specify the object. So this is called the implicit object. Each and every method is one implicit object, and we use the keyword this to refer to the implicit object. Right, so we have added some methods. What I'm going to do now is I'm now going to create the employee test class. Then I create an employee object, then I invoke these methods which are in employee class. Right, so I'm going to do this before I introduce any constructor. There is a reason why I am doing this. So let me create another class, and this is the main class. It is going to contain the main method, and like I said, I'm going to call it employee test. Right, it's a public class, and here I would want to have a main method stub. Then I click on what? I click on finish. Right, so I have this employee test class. Then I go to the main methods. Then I create an employee object. I am going to call it E is equal to new employee. Right, then after that I can call any of the three methods which I defined in employee. Right, I can call get salary, and then I can actually get the salary, and then I can actually print it to the console screen, or I can actually change the salary. Right, so what I am going to do is I am going to declare a string argument, and then a string variable name, which is going to store the name that is actually returned, and then I say get get name, like this. Right, so if I say get name, since we have used this constructor which does not take any arguments, what this means is that we have created an employee object without a name and an employee object without a salary. So if we try to print this, we are not going to get any value. But in essence, you can actually assign the result of invoking or calling a function to a variable, but you need to make sure that the variable is of the same type with the return type of the function. This getName method, when we defined it, we specified that the return type is string, which basically means that the value or result that is returned when it has finished execution and is now returning control to the main program will be a string. So we can actually store that value or result in a string, in a string variable. The same is true of this get salary method. When it finishes execution and returns control to the main program or the calling program, it will actually return a double result. So we can declare a double variable and then store this result which is coming from a function, right? So what we are now going to do is we are now going to set the salary first. So we can actually say e dot change salary, right? Then we pass the new salary here, like maybe 2,500. That is the new salary. So the new salary is now been set, so we can now declare a double variable to store the salary that we get when we now invoke the get salary method, right? So here what we are doing is that we are changing the salary of the object E, because I indicated earlier on that when we created this object here, we created an employee object without a name and a salary, because the name and the salary have not been initialized or have not been given initial values, right? So at this stage, we are now setting salary to 2,500 or changing salary to 2,500. Then here we then invoke the get salary method, which we expect to return 2,500 and then store it in a variable which is called salary. So we can now actually print the salary by simply saying system.out.println. Then we pass salary as an argument. So if I save this and then I run, I expect the program to print the salary of 2,500. Right, as I was expecting. Here is the result. Right, let me explain the meaning of this statement. Right, in one of our lessons I indicated that every class in Java is a data type. We defined or implemented a class which is called employee. This class employee is now a data type. We can now declare variables of type employee, like what we have done there, right? Then we assign a value to this employee variable. How do we create an object, or how do we come up with a value that we can assign to the employee variable? We need to use the new operator. This new operator, it creates a new employee object on the heap, which is a type of memory. Then after creating that new object, it then return the address of where that object is stored. Then that address is what is stored in this variable E. So this variable E does not store the actual object, but instead it stores the address of where the object is stored in memory. So it's more of a pointer or a reference or an address in memory of where the actual object is stored. right? In addition to that, when we say new employee, the system will actually call or invoke a constructor which is defined in the employee class, and this constructor is not supposed to have any arguments. But if we go back and check in the employee class, we don't have a constructor with no arguments. But how come we are calling it and our program is running and we are not experiencing or getting any error? The reason is that each and every time you create a Java class, it comes with one constructor with no arguments, which is normally referred to as a no argument constructor, or a default constructor. It actually is provided the moment you create a class. If you just say public class, then you specify the name of the class, opening curly brace, closing curly brace, you will have access to this no argument or default constructor, right? But you can actually define your own constructor, and if you define your own constructor, it basically sort of override that one which is actually provided by the system. And what that means is that the one which is provided by the system will no longer be available if you provide one or more of your constructors. The one with no arguments, which is default, or which is provided by the system, will no longer be available if you introduce your own constructor. So that was the reason why I wanted to that was the reason why I started by creating a class, and then I didn't add constructors. I wanted to actually demonstrate or show you that even if you define a class and then you don't provide any constructors, there will be one which will be provided by the system, which you can actually make use of. So what I am now going to do is I am now going to provide my own constructors. I have defined two constructors, right? I have got this one which does not take any arguments, the no argument constructor, and then I have got another one, the one which actually takes some arguments, which is the non-default constructor, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by defining the one which takes some parameters or some arguments, which is the non-default one, right? Why do we define constructors when we are implementing our classes? Constructors are used to initialize the state of an object. They are used to initialize the state of an object. If you look at this class, this is the state. There is no way in this class where we have initialized these variables. We didn't initialize them anyway, but we are actually using them. But if you recall, when we were defining variables inside the main class, we were actually indicating that variables must be declared and initialized before use. But that does not apply to instance variables which are defined inside a class but outside the main method, right? What happens is that these instance variables, they are automatically initialized by the system if you don't initialize them. If a variable is of type string, it is initialized to an empty string. If it is a number, it is initialized to 0. If it is an integer, if it is a floating point or double, it's initialized to 0.0. If it's an object, it's initialized to 1 to now. Right? So these are actually initialized by the system if you don't initialize them. So the problem is that the system might end up giving your variables, some initial values which you might not maybe like. That is the reason why we are now saying we need to define our own constructors, and then we initialize our variables. Right? So the main purpose of defining constructors, like I said, is to initialize our variables or initialize our state. And these variables, they are called instance variables. They are called instance variables. All right? And the methods that we have defined, they are called instance what? Instance methods. Instance variables and instance methods. So I'm going to define my non-default constructor here. How then do you define a non-default constructor? I have already indicated that you start by specifying the visibility. Since we want to actually invoke the constructor outside the employee class, we have to make it what? Public. So after specifying the access modifier, you then specify the name of the constructor. I have already indicated that the name of the constructor should be exactly the same as the name of the class. Should be exactly the same as the name of the class. And in addition to that, a constructor does not have a return type. Unlike methods, if you look at this method, there's a return type of what? A return type of string, right? Even if a method does not return a value, you need to put a return type of void. But here we are saying that a constructor is a special type of a method whose name should be exactly the same as the name of the class, and it does not have a return type. But it has what? It has an access specifier, and it can actually take some formal parameters. It can actually take some formal parameters. Right, so the formal parameters that we are going to add are the name and the salary of an employee. We want to initialize the name and the salary of an employee. So we simply say string name, then double salary. Right, then after that, in the body of the constructor, we simply initialize the name of an object to this name that we are passing as an argument, and we initialize the salary to this salary that we are passing as an argument. Right, using variable names which are similar might be somehow confusing. If you look at this class, we have got this variable name which is visible throughout this program, even inside functions. But we are declaring another variable with the same name. Even though these variables have the same name, they are different. They are different. This is just a local variable, and this is an instance variable, right? At times, maybe to avoid confusion, like I indicated earlier on, you can actually use the keyword this to prefix the instance variable, and then you assign the local what, the local variable. But even if you do this, your program will still what, will still compile without any problems, right? But we can just say this dot name. Alternatively, it might be better to use maybe a local variable which is different from the instance variable. What I normally do is I have adopted a certain convention where I just prefix the instance variable with the a, and then I capitalize the first name of the variable, such that I end up with something like what, like a name, and then here I can have a salary, like that. So now if I say this dot name is equal to a name, it becomes maybe clearer which one is being assigned to which one, right? So here I can now say a salary, like that, right? Even here where I defined that change salary method, I could have maybe said salary, like that. When I come here, I then say is equal to a salary, like this, right? So now I have a constructor. If I save this program and then I go back to my employee test class, as you can already see, there is now a problem, right? It is now saying the constructor employee is undefined, right? I indicated earlier on that when you implement a class and you don't provide any constructors, there will be one which is provided by the system, the one without arguments or the default constructor. But if you provide one or more constructors, you then lose the default constructor. You will not be able to use the default constructor. So what that basically means is you need to redefine it. You need to define a constructor which does not take any arguments, right? You need to redefine a constructor which does not take any arguments. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to now change the constructor that I am now calling here. I am now going to use the non-default constructor which I have just implemented, and this one, it basically takes two arguments. One is a string, the first one, then the second one is a salary. So I can actually pass two actual parameters here, the name of an employee, right? Then I pass the next argument, the salary, right? If I then here try to print the name of an employee, I am supposed to get the name of the employee name here, right? Then I run. So it's supposed to print the name of the employee. Then after that, it's supposed to print the new salary, which is this one. When I created the object, I set the salary to 3,450.90, but it has now been changed to 2,500. This is what is now being printed here, right? So at this point, when we now say new employee, what the Java virtual machine does is it will actually go to a class which is called employee.java, and then it will look for a constructor which is called employee, which takes two arguments, a string followed by a double. It looks for a constructor which takes two arguments, a string followed by a double, right? When it finds such a constructor, what it then do is it will then replace, right, the formal parameters with the actual parameters. So these are called the actual parameters, which you use when you are now calling methods or invoking constructors. So it will replace the formal parameters with the actual parameters, right? Such that if I go back to employee test, so here name will be having a value of what? Of Zanamwengoni, and then a salary will be having that salary that has been specified 34.50.90, right? Then inside here it will simply say this dot name becomes Ngoni, Zanamwengoni, then this dot salary becomes 34.50.90. So this is how the instance variables that we declared here are initialized, right? So let me now add the default constructor. So the default constructor does not take any arguments. I simply say public. Again, it's supposed to have the same name as the name of the class, but it doesn't take any arguments. And then I can simply say this dot name is equal to, then I assign an empty string to our name, then this dot salary is equal to 0.0. So now I can after saving this, I can now use the default constructor. I can now say employee E1 is equal to new employee, right, like this. So this basically again creates an employee E1 without a name and a salary of 0.0, right? So one thing that I would want to maybe indicate is that when you are learning how to implement these classes, we actually maybe recommend that after adding maybe one or two methods, you then compile this class, but you cannot run it. But if you compile it, if there are no any errors, it is supposed to compile successfully. So I can actually go to this file, then I have to compile it, or I can go to run. Right, then I just debug. But what basically happens is that it will then invoke this and then give us results. But if you are using other editors, you can actually compile it and then you get what? Then you get a result, whether it is maybe completed successfully or there are some errors. If there are some errors, you need to attend to those errors before you actually proceed, because if this file has some errors, if you try to compile and run this one, you always get errors. So you need to make sure that this class is free of any errors. right? So I think we have successfully implemented a class. We have successfully implemented a class. What is now left is for us to add more methods. We need to add more methods so that we can actually manipulate the employee objects. The other methods that we can actually add, they include maybe methods like a read method. If you look at the way that we are initializing our variables, we are just adding some what? We are just adding some values here, or we are just assigning some values to our instance variables. But we might actually want to give the user of our class maybe room to read the name and the salary through the keyboard, right? So we can actually define a method and then maybe call it read. We can define a method and then we call it read. So this is what I'm now going to do. I'm going to define a method which allows us to get the name of the employee as well as the salary through the keyboard, right? We have covered 4 methods which can be used to read input through the keyboard. We covered the readline method in the buffer reader class. We covered various methods which are defined in the scanner class. We also covered the readline. We also covered the method which is defined in the JOption pen class, which is the show input dialog, and we also covered the method which is in the console class, right? So what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to define 2 read methods, right? But one is going to be using the readline method in the buffer reader class, and then the other one is going to be using methods which are defined in the scanner class, right? So let me start with the one which uses the readline method, which is defined in the buffer reader class. So this method, right, it is supposed to be public because we want to be able to access it outside the class, or we want to be able to access it maybe from employee test and any other classes, even classes which are not in this package, right? Then we need to give it a return type. What type of value is it going to return? This method is not going to return any value. It is simply going to allow us to read input through the keyboard, or to be more specific, to read the salary and name through the keyboard, right? And the name, we can maybe just call it B read, maybe B standing for buffered reader, because we are going to be using the readline method defined in the buffered reader. Then we specify arguments, if any. In this case, this method doesn't take any arguments. So I can just say add the return type, which is void, then B read, right? Then no arguments. Then in the body of the method, I then need to create a buffered reader object. Buffered reader, maybe I call it BR is equal to new buffered reader, right? This one takes system.in, right? Sorry, it doesn't take system.in. It takes new input stream reader, input stream reader. Then input stream reader is the one which takes system.in. It is the one which takes the system.in, system.in, Right, I think there's an error on that line. One of the cause of the error is the semicolon. Then the other error is emanating from the fact that we are using the buffer reader class and the input stream reader class. These two classes are not in the standard java.lang package, so we need to import these two classes. Right, so I can just say import like that. Then I also import that. Right, so if I now check here, I now have these two import statements. Right, then in addition to that, what I also need to do is I also need to throw an IO exception, because here we are using the readline method in the buffer reader class, which basically throws an IO exception. So we need to throw here throws IO exception. So you just go to the header of the method which uses the readline method, and then you throw the exception. Right, IO exception again is not in the spelling is wrong, it's supposed to be lowercase x. Again, this class is not defined in the standard java.lang package, so we also need to import this class. Right, after importing that class, what we now need to do is maybe add a prompt, system.out println. Then we prompt the user to enter their name, and then once they type something, whatever they type will be captured and stored in a variable. Right, enter name like this. Then we can now say this dot name is equal to vr, that object that we created here, dot read line. Right, like that. Then we now need to read the salary. Enter salary. Right, but the problem with the readline method, whatever you read through the keyboard using the readline method will be a string. Even if you type a number like 2500, it will be viewed as a string. Hence we need to cast it into a double so that we can store it in a double variable. So what we want to do is we want to have a statement like this dot salary is equal to whatever we are reading. Right, dot read line. But the problem is that what we are reading is a string, and we are trying to assign it to a double variable. So you actually get an error. What we need to do is to convert this into a double. How do we do that? We use double dot pass double. We use double dot pass double. Right, this is basically a static method which is defined in the double class. Pass double is a static method defined in the double class, which allows us to convert a string to a number. Right, so we are done. That's all about this method. So after providing the method, we save and then we run. Right, how do we run? We now need to go to the test bed, and then we invoke that method. So we can actually come maybe here and then we create an object or use these existing objects, maybe like E1. So we can actually say E1 dot read. This is how you call the what? This is how you call the method, right? So if you say E1 not dot read dot b read, because we called our method b read, but there is one additional step that we need to perform. This method, the b read or the bread method, it is actually throwing an exception. So when we invoke it, when we call it, right, the method which is calling that particular method, it is supposed to throw the IO exception. It is supposed to throw the IO exception. So in other words, here we also need to throw what? We also need to throw the IO exception. Also need to throw the IO exception. Right, IO exception is not in the standard java.lang package. We then have to want to import it. Right, now we can call the what? The bread method. Right, so if we run, we expect to get a prompt from the program which prompts the user to enter their name, like maybe Taurai, right? Then after that you press enter, then you are supposed to enter what? You are supposed to enter your salary, but if you hit enter, it is just maybe printing the old what? The old salary from E, not the values for E1, but we could have maybe just said E1 dot get salary, such that we print the salary that we would have captured through the keyboard. So we can now enter the details again, maybe Tom, right? Then enter salary, that's the salary. Then we expect it to just echo the salary or print the salary, right? We can add other methods, like maybe the equals method. We might want a method which allow us maybe to compare employee objects for equality. When we are comparing two employee objects for equality, what we might want to do is we might want to compare their salaries to see if they are the same, and then we might also want to compare their names. So if their names are the same and then their salaries are the same, then those two employees will be equal. Those two employees will be equal. Then we might also want to define other methods, like maybe a method which allows us to maybe clone objects or create copies of employee objects. We might also want to define methods which allow us maybe to read employee objects from a file. We might also want methods which allow us to print the details of an object to the console screen, and also print to what? Print to a file. These are some of the methods that we are going to add in our next session.